Well, my mother-in-law is not my biggest fan, and that's because she's racist. I'm a Chinese woman, married to a white male, and, well, I'll just tell you why she hates me so much. I hope you guys have time today.
Hey, I hope you're all doing alright. I'll start this by saying that never in all my life and all my existence would I have thought that I would be the victim of one of the greatest plagues in the history of mankind: racism. Let's see, not for me, but for my family, more specifically for my children. My name's Ling, and I come from a Chinese family. I come to the United States when I was 2 years of age, and since then I've lived mostly in an Asian Chinese-centered community. I didn't meet the first Koreans or Japanese until I was 12 years of age, and otherwise I had to go through uncomfortable situations like any immigrant in the country. Things ranged from my appearance to my language, but I feel that I fared better than my parents who had to deal with racism in the workplace and on a social level. I, being so young, was able to camouflage myself better in today's environment, to the point where, when I started living independently at 19, I felt like I was in my own environment. Only I had slanted eyes, and to the changing world this was no big deal. Mind you, many have strange fetishes with Asian women, but luckily I did not get one of those freaks, although I knew a few, and that's when Gary showed up. Gareth, but friends and family call him Gary, appeared in my life at the best time of all, and when I was about to graduate, and I could have the privilege of being in the graduation pictures with him. Attentive, helpful, nice, and flirtatious. Being a 10 out of 10 for me from the first moment, so much so that we became boyfriend and girlfriend 2 months after we started dating, and in about 9 months we've already had the document that said in the eye of the state we were husband and wife. Ironically, after 9 more months, we were having none other than a pair of beautiful twins, with the same Asian features that made my parents so happy. Mind you, there was a downside to the whole equation, and her name is Leslie. Leslie, also known as my mother-in-law. Gary's mom is a, special case. The lady is the epitome of everything that's wrong with the average American. Regionalist, nationalist, racist, and even classist. At first, she doesn't take kindly to her son dating an Asian, even though he was head over heels in love with me. They used to have arguments that he avoided telling me, so as not to make me sad, because he said that if he had known, I would not have agreed to go out with him in the first place, which, to be honest, most likely would have, been true. I found out about this sometime after we started dating. He took quite a while to introduce me to his mother precisely because of this, and he said it was going to be chaos to get those two opposites to collide. For my part, I told him that there's no problem to have a healthy coexistence. I know what it's like to deal with complicated people, and Gary saw himself as a good match, so I didn't see it as that bad. During our first meeting, his mother was very nice. She treated us to a home-cooked lunch, and by that time I decided to bring some wonton so I could open up to her a little more. It's something I've done since I was little, and, wonton, in case anybody reading this doesn't know, are kind of a very thin dough empanada type that are filled with pork. I have not found the first person to resist them, as their flavor is quite general tasty. So much so that we have a varied version for vegetarians with steamed vegetables. Anyways, I took the whole tray to share, excited to bring a little bit of my country's gastronomy to my mother-in-law's house, and you know what her answer was? I don't eat foreigner food. Sorry. And she said it with a rather cynical smile, as if it was not welcoming at her house. After that, my heart broke, and something inside me, call it a sixth sense, made me reflect on the relationship I would have with this woman. I know Gary argued with her sometime later, and even went so far as to oppose our marriage, but we were grown-ups now, so we could do whatever we felt like doing, and that's what we did. Now, you may be wondering, what about the babies? How do they connect to all this? How Leslie reacted? Well, it was a little bit murky. The reason I started writing this was to release tension I've been feeling about the situation, which has left some pretty strong after effects, by the way. You see, Gary fully supports the customs and traditions of my family. In fact, they love him very, very much. And even though he's a white man, we still feel him as one of us, even making an effort to learn the language. So when I gave him the proposal and let it be understood that it was not just a proposal, it was not like I was forcing him, that the names of our children to come would be Chinese, he was very excited. We had chosen some names, Ding Yang for our son and Ding Ting for our daughter. Names that I've chosen since I was a child, and that I could have the fortune of being able to use both on the same occasion. And my luck is better, because after the pregnancy, due to some complications I had, I decided to get my tubes tied, so our little ones would be the end of the litter. And for us, it was more than enough, but not for Leslie. As I said, she quite opposed to the cultural heritage of our children, considering that should keep their American roots, and that's when she came up with the worst comment of all. It was a few days before they were born, asking us what names we would give the twins. We gave the answer, and she said, "You've got to be kidding me. No grandchild of mine is going to have a name like Ping Pong Yin Yang or Chow Pow or something like that. Name them Brian, Jessica, Roger, Annie." Of course, this went down very badly with me, and that generated some debate that went on for those days. Unfortunately, there was a big problem on the day of the birth, as Gary was with me in the room while I was in labor, and when it was over, he stayed with me while I was still weak. As it turned out, the nurse in charge of the registry were in the office, and certain grandmother of theirs was in charge of registering the babies on the birth control certificate. What was our surprise when we found out that the babies we had were Julius and Emily? She purposely got the names wrong, and the recordings of now looking like this. Julius is the name of Gary's late father, and Emily is the name of a sister he had years ago, who sadly passed away a few days after she was born due to respiratory problems. While she passed it all off as a simple act of caring, no one could deny that in reality she did it to dishonor and even mock the inheritance that we were about to give the children. I remarked to him some time ago that usually, to preserve both conventional Asian values, some Korean and Chinese tend to have Western names as well, like one of my friends, Moi Fan, who is Alice here in America. They might as well have had a name like that when they were older, but she said that she had to ruin it all with her damn racism, and you won't believe the bureaucratic procedure involved in a name change. It's amazing how just a few little intentional ill words would end up making up go round and round in circles to get the names changed. In the end, we did it and decided to cut ties with Leslie for a couple of years. But those things could not stay so marked either. I mean, we're talking about our children's grandmother, so it's only natural that she should be a part of their lives. Growing up, they would often ask us about Grandma Leslie, and I would tell them it's a bit of a hassle to get to visit her, but without giving too many reasons or details away. That caused her to distance herself quite a bit from Gary too. While I was somewhat mild about the separation, Gary was blunt and said that she alone had offended millennia of culture and even disrespected the both of us. Want to know a fun fact about that? My parents were a deciding factor in speaking to Leslie again, as they said that we should not exclude her from our lives just because we think differently. They're very wise, at the risk of giving them a lot of flowers, as we say, a very noble thing. They have endured more racism in America than I have, and said that we would gain nothing by excluding her from the family. The truth is that this situation causes Leslie particular pain because of her family record. Let me explain. She had 3 children. Gary was the second. The first was Gary's older brother, Anthony, but he decided to have a vasectomy and ended up cutting off the family bloodline right then and there. And Gary's little sister. Well, I told you how that turned out, so in theory, Gary was the only one who would perpetrate the family legacy, and thus Leslie, who always dreamt of her fantasy of the perfect American family, wanted her family to remain pure in every sense of the way, even when her son seemed to clip her wings with this desire. Well, I'll write this simply as an outlet. It's now been 10 years since the birth of the twins, and who were able to keep their original names given by us, so much so that we even decided to keep them in our normal dialect, without considering Western names at all. Of course, Leslie never gave up on her initiative, and almost always refers to Yang as Julius and Ting as Emily. Although they don't always get it right the first time. They're getting older now, and their interest in being with Grandma Leslie has gradually waned. Perhaps they've come to realize the exclusionary nature of their grandmother. They ended up being beautiful, beautiful children full of love, who have had the good fortune to live in a very inclusive environment. Times change, and so do societies, even though a few maintain the same deviant trajectory. I say this because currently Leslie still holds a certain disdain for our culture, and recently a situation happened that brought that little hidden resentment that she had to the surface again. But I think I'll tell you guys another time. It's late, and there's classes tomorrow, so I have to get the kids up early. I've had some free time these last few days, and that's why I've been writing this. It's not much common hobby of mine, but I like to do these sort of things. Anyways, thanks for reading. Update number 1. Hello again. I was telling you yesterday, something happened that made me come up with all this, and it was that Leslie told the kids that she was going to throw them a birthday party, or whatever they wanted. Whether it was a princess robot, some sports or TV series, or a movie, anything. But the kids and I have been talking for a while about having an Asian-themed birthday. I'm talking typical foods, dragons, Chinese, characters everywhere, and pretty cute red and gold decorations. According to them, even their friends and classmates are excited about the idea. But, as you can imagine, not everybody is happy about it. As if they have brought back their hatred and resentment for my culture, Leslie started to, quote, attack the kids gently, asking them if this was really what they wanted. I'm honest and tell you that I've never in my life forced my children into anything. Even when I had to drop them off at school for the first time, I did my best to not let them miss me, making them understand that they would be well taken care of there. The goal is just to make them feel comfortable with the idea, but those ideas can be harmful when injected, as Leslie tries to do. She wants to insert herself into their lives so she can have a typical American grandchildren, not knowing all the harm that she's doing to them. Anyways, the kids were uncomfortable when they told her, "But Grandma, we want a Chinese birthday." And Leslie asked if that's really what they wanted and not a normal birthday like the other kids. Believe me, it's so weird to see kids being uncomfortable. I mean, how can an adult ever offend a couple of 10-year-olds? They simply told her that they wanted a birthday like their mom and her family. Leslie's reaction was not very positive, to say the least. The children tell me that there came a point when I was not present where she asked, ask them very seriously if they really love their mother's culture, and that, when in fact the United States had so much to offer them. She went so far as to tell them that they would not even get, to know China for several years, so it wasn't worth getting excited about something that isn't even at a present in their lives, as everything else. But they said that, thanks to my side of the family, they always feel in harmony with the side of the cultural heritage. That surprised me quite a bit because it was basically a shut up grandma, but using much more kind words. We have not spoke to Leslie since, and it's amazing how little by little the kids went from a time of, let's go visit grandma, to, we have to go to grandma's, and that's very sad. Leslie herself is finding that which she fears the most, and that's being rejected with the last hope of her lineage, even if it's mixed with my genes. At this point, she doesn't care so much anymore, as she just wants to have a perfect American grandchildren. That makes me a little sick to my stomach, and we have avoided telling Gary about this, because then he goes into this rage and starts attacking his mother. He would start with, "Leave the kids alone, Mom. They want to be happy with their culture, our culture." And she would respond with, "It's not your culture, and neither is it theirs because they were born here, and this is where they belong." It's such common nonsense these days. I feel like it's the same conversation repeating over and over and over again. In the end, it's the children who end up hurting, and that's not the goal. The twins' birthday is still 2 weeks away, and I'll almost start planning for it, as it still takes a lot of preparation in between. Update number 2. Hello again. I report on the children's birthday and the situation with Leslie, which is somewhat unpleasant. First and foremost, everything went well. The kids enjoyed themselves, ate treats, broke a piñata, and there was even a magic show. All very nice, and the only downside was when it was time to open the presents, where the children decided everything from the dolls and action figures to school supplies. Of course, when it was time to open grandmother's present, Gary and I were a little apprehensive. We invited Leslie half out of obligation, rather than for the fun and pleasure, as my parents kept insisting that we had to tolerate her racist behavior. Anyways, Grandma Leslie's gift were nothing more and nothing less than pure nationalistic paraphernalia. American flags, stuffed eagles, even a slime cheeseburger. As well as posters of the presidents and coloring books of the White House, about the history of the country, including something I didn't even know existed. Anyways, the atmosphere felt very heavy, and we could see that in the children's faces, who were both disappointed and confused. It was one of the most grotesque scenes we've ever seen. Even so, they never lost their manners and thanked Grandma for their gifts. Even the other guests remained doubtful about this moment, as it was a rather awkward silence. At least until the next gift arrived, and of course not before Grandma Leslie had delivered a nationalistic speech, saying in front of a large community of Asians that the children had a great joy of being able to live in the best country in the world. My parents later gave me little reason as to why I had not invited her in the first place. That woman is a racist and still won't accept it. My parents told me that in such a case the idea would be to take the children away from her. It's a sad scenario, we know, but Leslie perfectly represents everything that's wrong with the stereotype of the average American. Later, we asked the kids how they were doing, and they said they were doing great, but then they asked us several questions about their grandmother. I ask you, how do you explain to your kids that their grandmother is a racist and that we don't want them to hang out with her anymore? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Update number 3. Hello again. I have a somewhat awkward update for everybody listening. Well, it turns out that the kids don't want to go to Grandma Leslie's anymore. And I quote, because they don't feel comfortable around her. Turns out that one of those days we had to leave them in her care simply because everybody was busy. Gary was on a business trip and I was in the office as usual, so Leslie was the only option. However, when we returned home, the kids were very quiet, more so than usual, saying that they did not want to go back to grandmother's, and when I asked them why, they were very quiet. When I asked them why again, it's because of one of the comments she made about, quote, their race, and she would show movies where the Asians were the villains and the Americans, as usual, were the good guys. Apparently poor Ting, who told me she kept being referred to as Emily even though she always corrected Grandma and told her that's not her name, was somewhat traumatized after a war movie of Americans versus Japanese was played. The thought of people similar to them being hurt in such horrible ways by those who were supposed to be their neighbors made her feel so panicky that she could not sleep that night. I asked the children not to discuss it with their father, as I was going to take care of it. If Gary ever found out, World War III would break out. Leslie has slowly but surely earned a place in my community as Ling's crazy racist mother-in-law, and I'm not proud of it at all. At this point, I feel that the next severing of ties we have with her is going to be final, with no chance of redemption whatsoever. We'll have to put the kids in a daycare or something, but I can't stand it anymore that they're suffering with every action, gesture, or word their grandmother gives them. And I saved the worst for last. Little Yang, after his trip to Leslie's, told me if there was any way to normalize his eyes, as he wanted to have them, quote, normal, like other people. That was a point of no return for me, and from now on my children will remain in the friendliest, purest, and most respectful environment with their excellent Asian heritage. Update number 4. Hello. It's a lump in my throat to have to comment on this, but I've recently received a call from Leslie. It's been 2 months since my last update, and it's been an awkward one in the extreme, since in all the time we have not visited or kept in communication like we usually do. The thing is, as I said, the kids were no longer comfortable around her, and already our friends and relatives have signed Leslie up almost as public enemy number 1. The problem was that she called me asking for a little audience between the two of us, so I went over to her house. She had changed the decor, or rather everything was a bit out of place, as if she had stopped cleaning her house a long time ago. Even though I had not been there for a few months, she looked neglected and had dark circles under her eyes. Even for somebody her age, it looked bad. She told me that she's been pretty sad for a while now about the whole kid thing, and wanted to know how she could get back to being with her grandchildren. Well, we had a rather sour conversation since it was talking about certain rude truths, and like the fact that she did not like me for just existing. I asked her where the dislike of foreigners even came from, and she told me she didn't know, just that she was raised that way from a young age and does not like the mixing of races, considering it unnatural. I was surprised at how light she felt about talking about such things with me in front of her. She told me that she wanted to have grandchildren who could fully enjoy their country of origin, but I asked her if she did not have any ancestry of some kind. She told me that she had some Irish and Italian, and that's when I told her there's nothing wrong with that, but she kept bringing up facial features, something that I felt like kicking myself for. It's like complaining that she has very white skin, to the point of looking like an albino. And she's only 65, it's not like she can't learn not to be so intolerant. The conversation veered off to me telling her that after such behavior, Gary and I were forced to separate the children from her life. She told me that even, and I quote, if they were like that, she still loved them. But I responded that those kind of thoughts were what caused us to pull away in the first place. She was seriously sad, and they were only grandchildren that she had left. She told me that my parents have at least 10 grandchildren, and that they were very lucky to have them around, and I told her that everything would have turned out differently if she had not been so intolerant. In the end, I left her house with no apology, but with a request. Leslie told me, with the biggest puppy dog face in the world, not to keep her only grandchildren out of her life. She would still love them, and from the bottom of my heart, from the deepest part of it, I wish that I could help her, but it's something that transcends, for not even the twins want her around, and I can't force anybody to be with somebody else. Only then I would become what I feared to be, a bad mother. Update number 5. Final update. Hello, or should I say ni hao? This is our trusted friend Ling texting you, straight from the other side of the world. That's right, we moved to China, my mainland, more specifically to the city of Nanjing, where my family was originally from. There's so much to tell you, but I think I'll just say the most relevant. Since the last update, it's been, I think, close to 9 months. I can't say for sure since we've been busy since then. I'll just say that we started a trip to visit relatives, and I've never seen in my life a crazy idea of my parents like this. We ended up getting attached to the place and decided to have an indefinite return visit. Let's see, many factors made us come before you start making theories, but without a doubt, one of the most important ones in all these updates I've made has been the issue of Leslie and her relationship with the twins, who right now should be with my parents walking around the market. Let me explain, right? Well, it turns out that my parents have been planning this for about 5 years now, and have been saving the surprise until they collected enough money to be able to tell us to come. But they told us under one condition, that we not tell Leslie, because if not, she might have a heart attack knowing that her grandchildren and her child would be on the other side of the sea. And that's when a somewhat evil plan began. I say this because the trip went wonderfully. We saw, enjoyed, toured, and met many people, treating Gary as best we could. It's quite comical to see him interacting with those people since they don't usually see many Westerners on the street, trying to get the words right to ask for a melon in the market. It's almost adorable to watch. He does his best, and if there's one thing I'm thankful for, it's that I started teaching my children Mandarin at a very young age, so they would just keep that family legacy. Who knew that, in the end, it would be not only helpful to them, but their main way of communicating at this place. Now, they're teaching Gary. According to my parents, I reached the average level of communicating without problems, which was one of my main insecurities. Leslie, on the other hand, well, back to the point. The truth is that she was in a depressive state for quite a while until finally she started bombarding us with text messages and phone calls. But every time she did this, I was the one trying to answer her to make her understand that there was nothing we could do about it anymore. That's when we had to reveal the trip. There was a moment when she got a little rude and shouty, saying that I had kidnapped her son and that I had sullied her family, and that, for me, was the straw that broke that camel's back. I blocked her, but not before telling her that it would have been nice if her grandchildren had more time with their grandmother. Let me tell you this, to this day, I don't know how I could have been so savage. Never in my life have I felt so much satisfaction in planning some sort of revenge against another person. And that's not where the petty nastiness ends. But I was the one who proposed the trip of no return. That's right. We were doing so well that I say to Gary, "Hey, how about we stay here? We're doing good. There's more family, blah, blah, blah." Convincing him was easy, as he was already thrilled with the place. I won't say it was a peaceful transition. The kids understood that the language is more complicated than I could have taught them, and that you need it from everything here. Although English will always be a good ally for them, Gary says he misses his mother to some extent, but only because of who she is, because he won't miss the way she is. In the end, she brought her new self-imposed solitude to herself. For our part, we're waiting for one of my cousins who stayed in the United States to come here too, because we asked him to bring some of our things with him. That way, the move would be completed, and we would start making our life in the place I always heard about when I was little. I feel like it's even a small reward that life gave me, and I could not be more grateful for it.
Alright, so it looks like OP was able to find peace going back to her homeland, which was in China. Guys, I do want to know your thoughts about this story. First of all, how the mother-in-law reacted. Maybe somebody out there listening has been through some in-law issues that were similar or related to today's story. If you have, or you just have an opinion you want to drop, put it down below in our comment section. Thank you for joining me on today's video. It was definitely a wild ride. Let me know your thoughts once again. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of stories every day. For more videos, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and smash those bell notification icons so you always get alerted when I upload. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Just remember though, it's cool to be kind. I'll see ya.